nativity play or whatever at SeaWorld, where they basically, it's all Christmas carols, like in medleys, like familiar Christmas carols that they turn into songs, or and they use to tell the story while they have people acting it out. And I actually, when we were watching, I was like, is this a Mormon thing? Because the people, just the kind of the way they were dressed, made me think that they were like. It reminded me of the weird way that people dress at like on the Mormon temple, because they were wearing like angel outfits, but then they had like white ties and shirts, like button-down shirts and stuff underneath it. So that was just kind of a weird thing. Anyway, so this production had like a really good production value, really high quality, and they jammed just about every, I would say, common conception of like what is in the Christmas story, the popular narrative of the Christmas story into this short 40-ish minute thing. And there are so many points in it that people will argue about. I would say the people that could have potential problems with this would be evangelicals who are super worried about historical accuracy, Catholics and Orthodox who are strangely only worried about historical accuracy when it conflicts with certain things that they have dogmatic beliefs about, which I'll get to in a second, and people that don't like the fact that Christmas is about Jesus. So, like, I don't know, atheists or something. These are some of the things that would be contested. Mary and Joseph, are they like their age and their romantic connection? Let's see, you get to Bethlehem and the story about the inn being full, and they had like these jokes about the Holy Day Inn was full, and maybe check at the Chariot. So obviously like modern hotel jokes, they kind of put in there a little bit. There was a wooden manger, which people, like even my own pastor, I don't know, he preached a sermon last week about how somehow it was really important to his thing about how it's probably a stone manger. The interesting thing about that is that wooden items don't typically last 2,000 years, so that's almost an archaeological argument from silence. And trees in Judea, we don't know, but they had carpenters. From King Solomon had the men learn from the Lebanese or the Sidonians or whatever, so they were there. And they cut down so many trees during the Jewish wars. So we don't know how forested Israel was. But anyway, so in this narrative, they kind of packed in a lot of stuff. They had the wise men be in there at the same time. That's, historically not accurate or whatever. It had talking animals. Then they brought all these real animals there. There was a llama, or an alpaca. Pretty sure that was not accurate, but it was fun. They had real camels, so that's like pretty impressive, anytime you go to a play with real camels. But the thing that kind of struck me about it was that, like, if you think about symbolic thinking or iconic thinking or something like that, like icons are these kind of like narrative compressing images, where it's got all these symbolic details because you can put it all in, and each thing has some sort of significance to the information that it's trying to portray and share. And I actually looked at some pictures of different icons of the Nativity, Catholic and Orthodox, to kind of see like what is the narrative that they're putting forth. And I think because this is an area where they will argue with Protestants and evangelicals, because we have different beliefs about like Mary and our doctrines about her and things like that. If we kind of take like the Peugeot view of things, like Jonathan Peugeot is not concerned with historical details. Historical details are not important to him. Whether the flood was global or not, whether this or that miracle really took place, maybe necessarily, or you know, because it's more about whatever the symbolic thing. And if that's the case, I think we go back to like those memes at the beginning, like okay, the Christmas tree has won. Nobody's going to get rid of Christmas trees because it's pagan or whatever. There are symbols that have won the evolutionary race, the survival to the fittest. And I think that the interesting thing is that overall, what this like play represented is the symbolic interpretation of the Christmas story that has won. And what I mean by that is I'm going to contrast some of these things. So if you look at the Orthodox icons, there's a bunch of details that you find that are consistent in those icons, and they would claim that this is a preservation of tradition. Now, of course, that tradition really only goes back so far, like, I don't know, to the 600s or 700s or something like that. But here's some of the things you'll notice. So it's a cave. It's not a wooden structure. Not that matters or whatever, but it is a cave. So it's not a house, which is one of the things you'll hear, that like the inn or whatever, or the stable was part of the house. Maybe that was the case. It doesn't have to be that, the normative way that most people lived tells us exactly what happened in this one specific instance. So they have it in a cave. That's one thing. And then they always have Joseph on the outside because it's something about like a man would never be in there while a woman's giving birth, and there was probably relatives or whatever. So you have just Mary and Jesus in this cave with Joseph outside. And Joseph's always an old man because they've accepted this tradition, which comes from like the proto-evangelion of James or whatever, that Joseph is this older man who was always planning to have a celibate relationship with Mary because this was just like something that kindly older men did to these women who were like some kind of a like Vestal Virgin thing that I don't think is part of Judaism at all. And I'm pretty sure Jacob would agree, because what the Bible says is that Mary was betrothed. She was betrothed. So she was a woman that was expecting to get married. Married means children. That was what a good young Jewish woman was supposed to do, was be married and have children. And so this weird thing where they portray it as like an old man who never slept with his wife and wouldn't, because he was old, he wasn't really interested in that. Like, that's part of their narrative mythology. So I would say it kind of looks like propaganda to me by making all these images that continually reinforce that certain narrative. And then if you look at the Catholic ones, they don't have the same thing with like the old Joseph. They have like this more like cuck Joseph. Like he's just like this guy who is closer in age to Mary, but he's just like, it's okay if we never go all the way, Mary. We can just cuddle and I'm happy with that. Like he's just like this loser boyfriend Joseph who doesn't want to be real husbands to Mary because, the perpetual virginity and all that stuff. And, I'm not saying that you necessarily have to believe that like Mary and Joseph were in love or they had some great romance or something. I think that would probably be to impose like too much of 20 and 21st century thinking about those sort of things onto the situation. But I would say that at a minimum, if there was any normalcy to their arrangement, these were people that expected to have a real life together and to have kids. And one of the things that we know for the development of healthy children is that the most important things that children can see is parents who love each other in a normal, affectionate way that married people love each other. So like if Joseph and Mary had a relationship where they never consummated it, there's no way that they would act normal, and that would be very weird and suspicious to everybody around them. And I think and that's even to go beyond all the things about how the brothers and sisters passages where they say it's like relatives or cousins or something like that. Like perhaps there's enough ambiguity in the way that it was written because God foresaw that people would have these interpretations, and it's his grace that allows them to go through life probably being wrong, and it doesn't really affect anything. But what I'm saying is that, the symbols that have won are, um, that it was like a normal relationship. And, I think like from a guy's perspective, you can see Joseph, like nobody can relate to this thing of like nobody in church is calling on older men to go marry single mothers and never have sex with them. But it is a situation that like a lot of people find themselves in, or where maybe a guy can read that story and be like, I'm not like Joseph wasn't excited about what was going on there, but he did it anyway. Like that's something somebody could relate to. And I think since no other women are becoming virgin mothers, Mary's much more relatable to as a real mother of real children with a real husband for them. And I think that, even historically, we can see, like, with the monastic movement and stuff, like, that caused harm. And, like, when they said that Constantinople fell because there was more monks than soldiers and there was more nuns than married women, that's a problem of prioritizing this weird narrative over, like, the thing that's normalized from Genesis all the way through. Which is normally most people get married and have children. And obviously, like, it's okay if you don't. Like, that's okay. Not everybody does, but most people do. And I think it's, when we just talk about, like, the incarnation and all this stuff, like, what's unique about Jesus, I think what's unique about him is that he never sinned, but his life was not necessarily, it wasn't the circumstance of his birth or the removal of the stain of original sin from his mother that made him unique. Joseph and Mary, I think, were regular people and probably godly people and good people that God chose for that purpose, but I don't think that we need to make them a special thing. And so it's interesting because in the areas where the Protestant common evangelical symbolism has won, those are the areas where Catholics and Orthodox will want to argue historical details and try to make a normative case for their beliefs. So those are my thoughts. And anyway, I thought one other thing is, I didn't get into the whole Santa Claus thing, but, Santa Claus is really interesting because as Santa Claus and Christmas spirit have remained like things that people will make movies about and make shows about. Like it's interesting how the mythology behind Santa keeps developing in these secular movies and TV shows. And I was telling somebody that I think it's not going to be too long before somebody's going to make a Santa Claus movie where it's going to be integral to the plot that Santa Claus dies and is resurrected. Like that's just the way it's going. As these people, as we remove the Christ element, the things that fill its void, that actually work, the things that succeed, the things that win, reflect the truth. And so I think in one sense that's why we could say the Mary and Joseph being real people that were really married kind of reflects the truth in the fact that that is the image and the symbolism that seems to have won the meme wars.